In the news tonight, Turkish police detained some 400 suspected Daesh members in anti-terror raids carried out in 6 provinces, and Ankara says at least 780 people, half of them foreigners, remain in detention. A former Daesh training ground in Mosul is providing the Iraqi army with significant clues about the mindset and ability of the terrorists as the next phase of the battle looms. And a Trump immigration order barring citizens from 7 Muslim countries falls into legal limbo after an appeals court denies the Justice Department's request to restore the ban. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details, and we begin with this video compiled by the Royal Hashemite Court media team accompanying His Majesty King Abdullah on his recent visit to Washington, where he met with the U.S. President and held talks with administration and congressional leaders. The media team spoke with a number of members of Congress who offered to reflect on His Majesty's vision on regional issues and his efforts to achieve peace in the Middle East. The video was posted on the Royal Court's official social media.
His Majesty is very well respected by the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He comes here, he speaks the truth, he speaks from the heart. He's a man of peace. When I get frustrated about all the things happening in the Middle East, and then I hear from the King, it's like a breath of fresh air just blew in.
The King brings with him, because of his relationship, not just with the United States, but his ability to go to Moscow, to go to the capitals across the world and to engage on these issues, to bring observations about steps which should be taken to try to create stability and economic growth. And we very much appreciate his perspective on these issues.
His is the voice of reasoning, of calm, of unity, of preserving the peace, and we look to him as that voice of reason. That's why he is so loved, he is so respected. There are few foreign leaders who come to Congress who are received as warmly as His Majesty.
When the King of Jordan speaks, America listens. It was a good meeting. We're about to renegotiate a memorandum of understanding with Jordan. Jordan's one of 2 countries where we pledge assistance over a long period of time. I would like to increase the amount of aid we give to Jordan because of the problems you faced in Syria. And I think from an American taxpayer's point of view, investing in Jordan is a good investment.
It's always a real privilege to meet with His Majesty. He is a great leader, not only for Jordan, but for the region. I've had 2 meetings with His Majesty during this visit, and the Jordanian commitment on refugees came up in both of those discussions. It's incredible the commitment that Jordan has made. A country like Jordan is entitled to greater economic help from the international community for the commitments that they've made.
He's a very valued friend, as is the country and the people of Jordan, but we always learn from him when he's here, and I'm really glad he's coming, especially at this time. I can tell you all the questions that are taking place in there really are to understand from him our best approach to the region.
He's always very direct, very trustworthy, and speaks not just for Jordan, but also for the region. Jordan isn't just working for Jordan, it's working for the world, and certainly for that region.
Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki received Britain's Secretary of State for International Development, Priti Patel, in the presence of Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, Imad Fakhoury, and the Deputy of the UN Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, as well as the Director of the Department for International Development. The meeting focused on Jordanian-British partnership in support of Syrian refugees and international pledges made to host countries. Mulki voiced appreciation to Britain for its support to Jordan Jordan, while reiterating the kingdom's humanitarian and ethical commitments to all those residing on its territory. However, he said Jordan and its people want to feel they are not alone in dealing with the refugee crisis, bearing in mind the burdens the country is carrying on behalf of the international community. Patel said Britain fully understands the economic challenges Jordan is facing, pledging continued assistance alongside international organizations in support of the kingdom's economy. Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Ayman Safadi, on a visit to the United Arab Emirates, met with Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The meeting dealt with regional and international developments as well as Jordanian-UAE ties and ways to enhance economic bilateral cooperation. The two sides also discussed Jordanian expatriate affairs in the UAE. Sheikh Abdullah commended Jordan's efforts to enhance joint Arab cooperation and achieve peace and stability in the region. Turkish police detained some 400 suspected Daesh members in anti-terror raids carried out in 6 provinces. At least 60 suspects of the terrorist group were detained in the capital Ankara, while 150 others were detained in Şanlıurfa province near the Syrian border. Turkey's news agency said those detained were mainly foreign nationals. Meanwhile, 30 alleged Daesh terrorists were detained in simultaneous counter-terror operations in Konya province, and 10 others were detained in Adıyaman province. Ankara says at least 780 people, half of them foreigners, remain in detention, some of whom have been convicted for suspected links to the terrorist group. Turkey has stepped up efforts to fight the group after it was blamed for a nightclub attack in Istanbul on New Year's Eve that killed 39 people. Having retaken one side of the city of Mosul, Iraqi forces, backed by U.S. support, now prepare for a military offensive to recapture the rest of the city, expected to start at any time. A former Daesh training ground in the city is providing the Iraqi armed forces with significant clues about the mindset and ability of the terrorists as the next phase of the battle looms. In order to battle terrorists positioned about 500 meters across the river, policemen study the training for clues. A former plant nursery, a park and a state-owned honey farm on the east bank of the Tigris River became a Daesh training ground and is now a closed military area under the control of the army. Iraqi police say trees and greenery provided ideal cover from airstrikes, and to be extra cautious, the terrorists built an underground tunnel with sandbags for air raids. The army also relies on intelligence from residents of West Mosul, turned against the group by the brutality of its rule.
This is the room where they used to hide from airstrikes. It is built of wood, but from the outside it is soil. Daesh used these entire areas as a training ground. The Ghabat area was cordoned off in order to train the members of the group on how to snipe at, use mortars, and for physical training. Our role here is to hold the ground following the recapture of the ground by the Iraqi armies and the counter-terrorism service, and the removal of Daesh terrorists.
لدينا اتصالات من خلال المواطنين في الساحل الأيمن يتصلون بنا.
We are in touch with citizens on the other western side. They contact us and inform us about Daesh positions, sniper locations. They are very helpful. They tell us who the snipers are, if they are foreigners or locals.
As the UN talks on Syria near, Russia is saying it supports the continuation of Syria peace talks under United Nations auspices, indicating that the long-running negotiations have not been thrown in doubt by the Moscow-backed peace talks in Astana. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Astana talks between representatives of the Syrian president and opposition groups were a breakthrough in efforts to resolve the crisis, but were not to replace the UN-led talks. We are not planning to replace Geneva with the Astana format, Lavrov said in an interview published on the ministry's website. He reiterated that Washington and Moscow are in a position to solve bilateral issues and coordinate efforts to fight terrorism, but that it has to be on the basis of mutual respect. The latest round of UN talks had been planned to begin in Geneva on the 8th of this month, but they now have been rescheduled for the 20th. And a new wave of migrants have been rescued off the Turkish coast and in the Mediterranean as more people attempt the risky voyage to cross to Europe. 46 migrants were rescued off the Turkish coast after the boat carrying them sank while on its way to the Greek island of Lesbos. The migrants from Syria, Afghanistan, Congo, Eritrea and Bangladesh were brought to the port in the Turkish coastal town of Ayvacık for registration before they were sent to a repatriation center. Less than 10 kilometers from the Turkish coast, Lesbos has been a primary gateway for thousands of migrants entering the European Union's outermost border. And Italian Coast Guard rescued some 2,000 migrants in the Mediterranean in the past 2 days. Italian Coast Guard released a video of the migrants being rescued from rubber boats and wooden vessels without giving details of their origin, gender or age. A record 181,000 people arrived in Italy last year, most of them seeking work. Their arrival in Italy came as European leaders offered Libya money and other assistance to try to curb record migrant flows from the country. Libya has become the main point of departure for migrants trying to cross the Mediterranean by boat to Europe since a route between Turkey and Greece was largely closed off last year. Over the past week, Libyan Coast Guard have intercepted some 1,300 migrants at sea as they attempted to journey to Europe. The Trump administration's immigration order barring citizens from 7 Muslim countries and temporarily blocking refugees fell into legal limbo after an appeals court denied the Department of Justice's request to restore the ban. In a brief order, the San Francisco-based 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said the government's request for an immediate administrative stay of the judge's ruling has been denied. The judge said that for Trump's order to be constitutional, it has to be based on facts as opposed to fiction, and this making President Donald Trump furious. Here's more.
For some, it's to see relatives, others just to go home. Whatever the reason, those affected by Donald Trump's travel ban are scrambling to enter the US while they can.
Nobody said to me no. Very good.
I'm a doctor, I'm a US citizen. I believe that we are a productive part of the American society.
The Department of Justice had appealed to have the ban restored immediately, but late Saturday night, that bid was rejected by a federal appeals court in a further setback to the new president. His executive order to bar citizens from 7 mainly Muslim countries and temporarily block refugees was originally lifted on Friday by a judge in Washington state. That prompted this unprecedented attack by Trump on Twitter, saying the opinion of the so-called judge, as he termed him, was ridiculous and will be overturned.
We are sending a message of love and peace.
Demonstrators see the ruling as a victory for democracy, but they know it may not last long.
I hope that there's nothing that's going to happen that will make the ban come back. So that's also why we're here today, to try to make sure it stays this way.
Government lawyers have until Monday to challenge it further. They say it poses an immediate risk to the public and questions the president's judgment on national security. But for now, the courts don't agree, creating what may be a brief but vital opportunity for those affected.
With French presidential candidate François Fillon being pressured to withdraw from the race on the back of a deepening financial scandal, latest surveys show far-right leader Marine Le Pen and independent Emmanuel Macron as the 2 frontrunners. In a rally today, Le Pen told thousands of supporters she alone would protect them against globalization if elected president. Macron says Le Pen's anti-immigration National Front would betray France's ideals.
A weekend of rallies for France's 2 presidential frontrunners. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen formally launching her campaign in Lyon, promising freedom and to shield voters from globalization. Another pledge that goes down well with the crowd, holding a referendum on EU membership after Britain's lead. On the other side of town, and the political divide, centrist hopeful Emmanuel Macron rousing his supporters with an attack on Le Pen, mocking her slogan, "In the name of the people."
Some people today pretend to talk for the people, but they are only ventriloquists.
Le Pen's anti-immigration National Front would betray France's ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity, says Macron, standing as an independent. The Le Pen camp responding with their own barbs that the investment banker and former economy minister is the candidate of international capitalism. Macron, pollsters' favourite to win since the scandal engulfed François Fillon. Frontrunner a week ago, centre-right Fillon's under pressure to drop his presidential bid because of accusations that he paid his wife a large salary for nothing. His Republican Party fears it could now miss the March deadline and field no candidate at all, leaving Macron and Le Pen to battle it out. Latest polls predicting Macron would beat Le Pen in the election's second round in May.
Buckingham Palace reissued a photograph of Britain's Queen Elizabeth to mark the Queen's Sapphire Jubilee. The photo shows the Queen wearing a suite of sapphire jewellery given to her by her father, King George VI, as a wedding gift in 1947. Tomorrow marks the Queen's 65 years on the throne, the first ever British monarch to have reached such a milestone. The 90-year-old Queen acceded to the throne on February 6, 1952, when her father died. Despite growth in digital books and people shying away from the traditional paper book culture, there are still some old-fashioned readers out there. And to make reading books even more appealing, a capsule hotel in Japan is catering to those bookworms. Book in Bed Tokyo offers only closet-sized bunks embedded in rows of bookshelves. The walls, ceiling and most of the decor of the hotel are packed with tomes of all sorts. To be exact, 3,200 books in different languages. During the day, a common room serves as a lounge for day visitors who can also come to share the experience of reading books together. The hotel opened a year and a half ago and includes 60 cubes, each equipped with a mattress and reading lamp.
The reason why I came up with this concept was that I wanted to stay in this kind of hostels where you can fall asleep while enjoying something fun. That's how this hotel began.
I think like word of mouth, people spread that they've stayed at a Book in Bed or they're thinking of staying at a Book in Bed, and Japan really is like the center of where all these new ideas are popping up.
We begin with the second half of the final of the African Cup of Nations between Egypt and Cameroon. That is underway right now. The second half is at 1-1, although in the 22nd minute of the game, Mohamed An-Nini scored for Egypt. Egypt won the AFCON tournament in 2006, 2008 and 2010, and the best of luck for Egypt tonight. And just a few hours and the Super Bowl 51 showdown between the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons kicks off. The Patriots will be making a record 9th appearance in the NFL's championship game. If they win, it will be a record 5th crown for quarterback Tom Brady and head coach Bill Belichick. The Falcons, meanwhile, have never won a Super Bowl, as they have made only one trip in their 51 history, losing to the Denver Broncos in 1998. Some 180 million Americans and worldwide television audience are set to tune in for the clash.
Thank you for your cooperation, and we hope you enjoy your experience.
Seas. He knows the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Turkish police detained some 400 suspected Daesh members in anti-terror raids carried out in 6 provinces. And Ankara says at least 780 people, half of them foreigners, remain in detention. A former Daesh training ground in Mosul is providing the Iraqi army with significant clues about the mindset and ability of the terrorists as the next phase of the battle looms. And a Trump immigration order barring citizens from 7 Muslim countries falls into legal limbo after an appeals court denies the Justice Department's request to restore the ban. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Al-Tufqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.